Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to my little tutorial about Dota 2 and flex animations. In this tutorial I'll try to explain to you all I've learned about flex animations regarding Dota 2, specifically cosmetics. First of all, please read the description. It'll contain updated information if there's any available, and all the links to the software used and the guides that I've used to gather this information up. And also a written copy of what I'm trying to tell you here, so you can look it up later and don't have to bother with my sometimes long-winded explanations in this video. Okay, so first of all, what are flex animations? If we take a look at the Valve developer wiki, you can see these are mainly used for facial animations, but they can be generalized to say they are vertex animations which change the model without using the traditional skeletal animations used in all the other movements of characters for Dota 2 models. Here you can read up on all the details of the file formats used, which I've used to gain some insight into it as well. So if you need to program something or understand the formats in detail, you can look up this website. As I said, links will be in the description. So first of all, how do we get the Dota 2 models? There's two avenues here. Once you can get the reference models in an official website by Valve. But there's only the models available for all the heroes that have already been broken down and made ready for cosmetics. You can use, you can get all the get the other ones by another method. So here you can click on the individual heroes, like let's say Faceless Void, and here you can see his individual body parts and the limits that are imposed for the cosmetics if you want to make some. And here's also a download link for you to get the model. And in this download link there's three file formats available: the Maya ASCII format, MA, which can be used with the Maya program by Autodesk. It's a commercial software which is not available for free for commercial use, but if you're a student, you can go to the students.autodesk.com website, which will allow you to sign up with a student email address and obtain software for free, but only for non-commercial use, so you cannot use it to make cosmetical items for Dota 2. Keep that in mind. I used the educational version, but I'm not creating cosmetics with it, so I'm within the legal boundaries of what is allowed to do with the software. Alright, so besides actually downloading the official files, there's a way to extract the game files, and this can be done with the Canon Fodder Studio compiler. There's a few caveats to this. You can not extract the facial animations with this for some reason, because this is using an older version of the MDL file format, and you even have to make some changes to the files before extracting them. So let's show you this now. Okay, so if you need to first unpack the Dota 2 files with the GC Escape. So you have to navigate to your Dota 2 folder, which is typically in Program Files, Steam, Steam Apps, Common, Dota 2 Beta. And there under the Dota folder, there's a file called pack01dir.vpack, and you open that. And here you see all the game files. And you need to extract these into somewhere into your hard drive, preferably into a folder that I'll tell you about later. But so if you extract them, then you find the models in Model, Heroes, and then the hero name. in this case, faceless void. Alright, I've already done that, so I'll navigate to that folder now. Dota2, models, heroes, faceless void. Alright, here we see the MDL files, which link to the vertex files and the other info files. The thing is, the Canon Photo Studio compiler cannot deal with the newer versions of the vertex lists, dx9, vtx. So you have to rename them into dx80 vtx. I'll use a script to do that because I can't be bothered to copy all of the files and rename them all manually. But you can get the script in the description or just copy it over. It's not that big a hassle. So yeah, I'll use the script. So now you see there's the dx80 vtx. So now you go in the Studio compiler, you go to model decompile. You choose the model file, which I like to do by just copying the file name. Because for some reason the file browser on this thing sometimes blows up the program and just goes down. And choose a folder to extract. I'll just create a new folder for that now. Alright. So now it decompiles. And here we have some files which we'll use later on as well, but just for now you have the SMD files with the different level of detail versions, which are in this case both the same, so not really much exciting here. Then the Quake C file that was extracted that can be used to recompile these files again, which we'll use later on as well. Anyways, now if you can obtain it either this way by extracting, or you can get them on your official website. Now, how do we view these files? We can use 3 programs to just view these. I like to use the source filmmaker to view the models. You can download it for free in Steam. And when you start it, you need to start the SDK, not the source filmmaker itself. Then you need to create a mod. I call it Dota2 because I'd like to edit the Dota2 files. And then it'll create, then you can go into the Steam folder. There you go into Steam apps, your username. Sorry about that. Just the comment folder, and then the source filmmaker folder. And then under game, there is a folder by the name of your newly created mod. In this case, Dota2. So this one. And I extracted all the Dota2 files into this folder. Also, be sure to not replace the game info.txt, because if you do, then you may not be able to start the source filmmaker. But yeah, extract the files here into this folder, and then use the model viewer of the source filmmaker to open the model. Like, let's open the head of faceless void right now. Go to heroes, faceless void, and open his head model. Yeah, right. So nothing very exciting. It's just faceless void's regular head. And as you can see, there's all the regular bone structure that the head is attached to. And if you open the head, you can see under the Flex tab, there's the Flex animation controllers for this particular head. You can play around with these, like open the jaw, I don't know, make the sound for the phoneme sound for an F or V and other things. Let me hide the bones real quick. Okay, like, but the information that you can see here is also already very important. You can see the controller names that correspond to the different vertex animation frames that you need to recreate to make your cosmetic be able to have facial animations. There's not a lot of cosmetics in Dota 2 that actually have any flex animations applied to them. I just know of Faceless Void head and Sand King's head, but there are some others, I believe. So, except for the Half-Life model viewer, you can either use Maya, Blender, or any other 3D package that supports any of the file types that come with either the download on the official website or that you can export from the with the decompiler. So it's SMD, FBX, or MA files. Anything that can open those can be used to open these files. Okay, now let me show you how you can open this in Blender. You have to install the SMD plugin, which you can also find on the Valve Developer Wiki, or you can follow the links in the description. And here you can you have to go to Import, and then well, you can open the SMD files, which I'll show you right now. So if you download the files from the Valve website, it also comes with the SMD files. But the problem with these is if I open the head right now real quick, these only come with the vertices pretty much. There is no shape keys or flex animations here in this case. So you can't really use these as reference for which blend shapes you need to create to be able to bind to all the flex controllers. So there's a little bit of a problem here. And we can't natively open FBX files with Blender, but there is a FBX importer-exporter available, which contains some proprietary code, which is why it can't be shipped out with Blender by default, but you can follow the links in the description and install the FBX installer, the FBX plugin for Blender. So let me open the FBX files. In this case, the head for Faceless Void. Wait, give me a second. I'll just open an empty scene and do that again. FBX file for the head. Great. Okay, so the problem is the importer doesn't really open the animations and the bones correctly. So in this case, the head is not bound to any bones. So you'll need to reference the SMD file to see which bones you have to attach the head to, or you can consult the website, which usually has some information, but not in this case. But you can see here the staff tells you which bone you have to bind it to, and I'll usually just go by what the models, the supplied SMD files actually are bound to. All right. So if you want to export this again, you have to make sure that you bind the head to the bones again and parent it under the bones. Anyways, as for the shape keys, you can see here the fully qualified names of the shape keys. For example, the jaw open. But you see these, there are a lot of more shape keys than there are flex controllers in the model viewer. So multiple shape keys sometimes make up one flex controller. For example, the eye up and down and the eye left and right. are combined channels from these shape keys. How they'll combine into each other I'll explain later, but for now it's all that's important is that if you want to create a cosmetic with all facial animation intact, you have to recreate all these shape keys for your custom head. For example, the jaw open one, or the jaw clencher, which you can't really see much of a change, but you basically have to recreate all of these. You don't actually have to change anything when you create these, but you should create all the shape keys. Why this is, I'll explain a little bit later on, but just trust me on this one. Except for the ones with the underlines in between. These are corrective shapes, which you don't need to do, but if you want to copy the the combination channel information, you probably need to recreate these two. So this is the replacement that gets blended in when you have both the jaw open and the lip corner puller channels active at the same time. This one is blended in slowly. So these are there to correct the possible interferences of the different shape keys if they're active at the same time. Anyway, so now we have the channel names and we have the shape keys, which the channel names are used. You have the shape keys that are used to create the channels. But how do these relate to each other? Well, that's a little bit difficult. We can't actually use Blender to find that out. So let's close out Blender for now. And let's start Maya. And the thing is, the Maya files supplied by Valve officially require the binary plugins by Valve to open their file formats. There is a way to use scripts only to open their file formats, which is the Mesa plugin, the Mesa script compilation, Mesa script compilation, let's say. No, that's right. The Mesa scripts, basically. So if you go to the you go to the Mesa page, these scripts here can be installed in Maya to open and export the file formats of Valve, but the problem is they are not complete and don't really include everything needed to open the Maya files. So as you can see, I have installed all the Valve plugins. How to do that you can read on some guides online. I'll try to link them into, but basically just look up on the developer wiki how to install them. And the binary plugins for Maya are included in the source FilmMaker, but the caveat is you can only use 32-bit versions of Maya to use these plugins, because the plugins are, like I said, the binary and they are 32-bit compiled, so you can't actually use 64-bit versions of Maya in this case. Be aware of that. Alright, so if you want to open the Maya files, you have to go to Windows, Settings, Preferences, Plugin Manager, and there you have to include these plugins. Like I said, how to install those you can read up on in the developer wiki of Valve. So I'll just always load all of them. I don't think they're necessary. It's mainly the VS Master and the VST SMD.io that you need, but just to make sure I'll load all of them. Alright, so let's open the Maya files. Alright, there's a warning, which alerts us to the fact that there's a Python file that we don't actually have, but we'll have to do without that. The thing is just that this Python file is one that we'll really like to have, because it's actually the Python file that's the plugin that makes the flex sliders actually work correctly, so that we could actually change them. Right now we can only see how they are set up, but we can't actually create new ones with this without the Python file. So let's take a look at it. We have if we look at the head, wait a second, let me open the outliner. So we have these, all right, let's just look at the head for now. So yeah, and if we open our blend shapes in animation editors, blend shapes, we see that they're actually, we can't move them at all, but these are the same ones that we saw in Blender. Well, I think it's 47 of them, including the corrective shapes. But we can't actually move them because they are bound by an expression of the flex slider node. So let's open the flex slider node, which you can either find by looking at the blend shape, or you can use the hypershade to view it. If you open the hypershade with the connections from the head, you see that there's one node on the bottom left, which has a bunch of outputs, which is the flex slider node. So if you select that and watch into the look into the attribute editor and go under attributes, there you will find the same flex channels that we saw in the Half-Life model viewer, including the stereo one, not the stereos, the ones that are combined. Like, let's say, for example, the jaw sideways, or the eye up, down, up and down. You see eye down and up. It's just one channel. But of course, Faces Void doesn't have eyes, so we can't actually see them move right now. All right, so there's also the jaw open one, which I always use to check if it's working correctly, because it's the most motion, pretty much. All right, but we saw there's multiple inputs sometimes for these channels, and how exactly do they relate to each other? This can be found out if you look at the hypershade again. You'll see that this has a bunch of outputs into expressions, and these expressions actually are how they are combined. If we look, for example, at this is lower lip depressor expression, you can see that here in the expression window. Let me just copy that out really quick, because it's kind of hard to read in this small window. Let me just open the script editor. Right, so, well, this doesn't have line break. Well, just let me open the text editor really quick. So here you can see it's faces void, face depth, blend shape, blah blah, not really important. This is just the object the node is under. Lower lip depressor, and it has a bunch of combinations of max and min functions, which take into consideration some of the blend shapes that are used in this case. So now we know which blend shapes we have to create, as we saw in both in the Blender version and here if you look at the blend shape editor. And we know how they are combined into the different flex channels, as we can see with the expressions right here. But how do we actually export them if we create our own? Well, this is a little bit complicated. So if you have this all set up like here, like this in Maya, you can just export it as a DMX file, and it'll stay intact. So if you go to export selection in this case, and can't open this again, right, and you say valve DMX, and you export the DMX file, let's say, let me give it a name like faceless head DMX. Could not save it. I think I have the node selected. That's wrong. I needed to select the head. Right. Sorry about that. Export selection. I think is the set dot mix. I should actually select something different. So if you go into the outliner, you can clearly see that there's predefined groups for the export channel. But never mind, it's just the same. So just export the head as a DMX. And let's navigate where we actually saved that. This is in this case on the Dota2 source, model source, heroes, faceless void, Maya, and there we have it, faceless head DMX. Problem is that the default output is the binary format of DMX, which is not very helpful. We can just see a bunch of strings, but if we open that in a hex editor, very quickly, wait a second. Right, so if we open this in a hex editor, we can see there's a bunch of strings at the beginning of the file, including the different expressions used. So you can also use the expressions, you copy the expressions from here if you don't want to painstakingly copy them one by one. You can copy them all from this block and format them correctly for later use. But alright, but this doesn't help us. It's a binary file. But the thing is, there is, with the source FilmMaker and other SDKs of this source, of the source package, there is a tool to convert the binary DMX format into a ASCII human readable one. So let's open the command prompt here. And let me check which directory I'll have to go to. Actually, I have to go back 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I'm kind of confused, sorry about that. Alright. There you go. DMX convert is the name of the tool. And let's just consult its help function. So there you go, the usage. You have to specify the in file, the out file, the output encoding, and the output format, which in this case we have the in file, which is our exported faceless head DMX, an out file which we'll call faceless head readable, still DMX, and the output encoding, which we set to key values 2. So output encoding key values 2. So now there's the file we created. Now this is the human readable version of the same binary file. And if we look here at the something like the third node here is called DME combination operator. And this is the parent node, which is common to all the different both blend shapes and flex controllers. So if we look here, we have the inner brow razor, we have outer brow razor, brow nora, and we see here eye, right and left. So these are the flex controllers. So they're just pretty much listed here. And if we scroll further down, we'll see there's, and further down, there's the default values, which are used to initialize them. And here we go with an element array with the targets, which are basically the blend shapes, are called targets in this case. And here we have DME flex rule pass-through, which just lists all the different, the 47 no, wait a second, sorry about that. This lists all the flex controllers, and also has the, yeah, I'm sorry about that. These are all the different, like I said at first, these are the different targets or blend shapes and how they combine to the flex channels. So here you can read them all. These are some very simple ones like I down, which just factors into I up and down and also makes sure that it's not below 0, and some other factor here. It's inverted because because the I up and down scale is both factors in the I up and the I down. And the I down value is of course the negative one, so it's multiplied by -1. But anyway, these are the details we don't really need to know for now. Okay, you can see these expressions can sometimes get quite long, so all right. So our problem is that we don't really know how to write these into our own custom items. How would we do that? Now, there's one way we can actually do that using Blender, actually, surprisingly. The SMD importer exporter has some functions to copy over the flex channels from another file. So in this case, we can just use the exported DMX file and copy it over from here. So, but there's just one simple problem, but let me demonstrate that. I've created a very simple mock-up of faceless void head, and by very simple I mean very, very, very simple. Let me open that. So here we have just like a sphere and some teeth-like crevices. Anyways, I've set them up correctly, so I have bound them to the skeleton very simply. So there's not very much to it. And as you can see, I have also created the 47 different blend shapes. So, for example, the jaw open one, you can see here. And the phenome, the phonemes, I'm sorry, and the phonemes. So, just some key ones. The other ones are completely blank. So if I lip sideways, left and right, don't actually do anything. In this case, I've just created them to make sure that I have all of them there if I export them. So I can now export these intact and copy them into the right channels. So use the calculations that we saw earlier, these expressions right here. And to do that, there's under the Scene tab of the Properties window, there is, if you have the SMD plugin loaded, there is a section called well, this is awkward. I actually just upgraded the Blender version, so this is kind of missing something here. Alright, sorry about that. Let me just open the other Blender version. This is kind of unexpected. Didn't expect it to change or anything. Sorry about that. So let me open Blender 265. All right. So yeah, looks like you have to make do with Blender 265 for now. 266 does seem to have a bug. Good to have found that out. All right, so if we have the object selected, which remember you have to properly parent under the armature to export correctly. All right, if we export it as a DMX file, we can actually go onto Flex Properties here and change it to Advanced If you just go for simple, you can export it and it will create a separate flex channel for every single blend shape you have. But that's not actually what we want, so we go to advanced, and here we can copy over the flex properties from another file. The problem is just if we select the flex file of faceless void DMX model we exported. Let me do that right now. This is the faceless head readable. Let's select the ASCII file. They are both equivalents for this sake, but let's open it. And let's try to export this, only this head object. And there we go, a bunch of errors. So what do we actually do to fix this? We have to actually just extract just the flex animation properties. And to do that, you can go into the flex controller properties here and just press generate controllers. Now created a text file called flex ball face 001. Let's open that. As you can see, it created a DME combinator operator structure like we have seen in the file. So we just need to copy over the necessary nodes from this text file, which includes the control values lagged, where there's no dominators, and then the targets and the controls. So the most important things are the control values lagged, and the targets. So if you can copy those over into this text file, or you can create a new text file outside of Blender with this structure and copy those over yourself. So make sure that you actually remove the target reference, because this reference, this parameter in the node tree here denotes the UUID of the actual cosmetic, of the original cosmetic. So you don't actually have an element with this particular key here in your exported DMX file if you do that outside of Blender. So I just recommend you remove this reference if you copy the elements over. So if you just copy over the targets, controls, control values, and control values lagged, and just omit the rest. So don't create a target parameter here. All right. So if you've done that, which I've prepared for time's sake, you can actually use that. Sorry about that. So I've created a faceless 6D flex only. Open that. And you can copy that from this file. If you export it now, you can see it successfully exported the file. And you can import that into Dota, which, let me just do that now real quick to show you. So as you know, if you open the Dota client and go into the workshop section, you can import different files like the FBX, DMX, and SMD files. But the problem, like I said, is with SMD files, they don't actually have these vertex animations. SMD files can just have regular skeletal animations or and models. They don't actually contain, they can't actually contain vertex animations. I'll show you how to use them later on, but for now. Right, if you go into the workshop section and go publish new submission, wearable item, faceless void, select the head slot. Make sure you create a unique file name. If you imported a file once, then you have to either delete the created folder or you have to make up a new name, because otherwise it'll just reuse the already imported one. You won't be able to see the changes which you import. Let's just say finish this tutorial test 1, and let us select the exported model, which we saved in source, zeros, faceless void, ball face, DMX, and make sure that you put the file into the geometry, into the portray geometry slot as well, because the thing is, the flex animations are only active for the portray animations. They aren't actually visible in the game. So if you, in the map. So if you zoom in as close as you can in the map, you won't be actually able to see the facial animations. They're only there for the little portray card on the lower side of the screen. So I'll just use the default textures. Right, pterosaurs, faceless void, faceless void head. Right, so now we import it. You can see successful, it was inside the vertex limit. So now this looks a little awkward, but it's pretty much what we want. The problem is we can't actually test the flex animations, the flex vertices, the vertex animations inside this preview window. We can see both the versions, the level of detail versions here in the portrait mode, but you won't actually move his mouth. So yeah, that's that. So we can't use this to preview it right now, but I'll show you how to do it later. For now, we have imported this, which we needed to generate the QC file and the DMX files compatible with Dota. So now we can navigate to the folder where it's where it put our model files. So let me just go to the Steam folder, Steam apps, common, Dota2 beta, and here under the content folder we have our faceless tutorial test 1, which we now have the DMX files for both level of detail levels, and we have the QC file, which we actually need in this case. So if we open that file real quick, you can see the model name here inscribed is under my weird user ID, so we can't actually test that. If we compiled it to this file, we wouldn't actually see the result. So instead what we can do is we can compile it into the default model, so we can replace the default head model. So let's do that right now. We can just replace the model with the default heroes faceless void head MDL. So let's save the QC file. Now we have to compile it with StudioMDL. I'll just use the GUI StudioMDL, but you can just use the normal command line tool as well. I just prefer this one to make this rather quick. Alright, so let's go to Steam apps, common, Dota2 beta, content, Dota, models, items, faceless void, my user ID, tutorial test, and open the QC file. Now let's compile. This will take a while to actually read all the files and rearrange them into the binary MDL format. But the thing is, if we have the MDL file, we can replace it with the default one. But before we do that, let's just open up the result in the model viewer. So right now we have the model open, which maybe we shouldn't have, but let's just hope it doesn't right log it. Faceless void. Let's wait until it's finished. heroes, faceless void. Alright, as I've said, this may be a little bit chaotic for the format, but this is just an addendum to the written version, just something in case I forgot to include in the written version how to do it. Just a small little demonstration. Alright, so now it's done. Let's open up the faceless void head and where is it? Oh wait, there it was. Right. So I forgot to set the texture path correctly when exporting it in Blender, but don't mind it for now. That's not really important because it gets overwritten in Dota anyways. But as we can see, we have all the controllers here, which is nice, and we can also actually see that they are working if we remove them. Like I said, I haven't actually implemented all of them, just some key ones like the phonemes, sorry about that, and the jar open animation. Alright, so we see that the animations work in the exported MDL file. So, but how do we actually replace the default model now? We have just put it in some random folder. But you can actually do this two ways. You can either go into your Dota folder and export the game files into this folder with the GCFscape, and then actually delete the VPEG files. In that case, Dota is forced to use the extracted models, and they can easily replace it, or you can use the program I found called update.exe, which I'll understand if you're not comfortable using it because I just found it randomly on the internet. So I can't guarantee that it won't harm your computer anyway, but it's more comfortable because it won't force your client to actually re-download a lot of the game files every time there is an update that hits. So it's a little bit of a relief to the method of actually extracting the files. It works by actually just placing the files that you want to put into the VPEG files in the folder, subfolder here. Let me just do that real quick. So we have the models, heroes, faceless void, and then all the files beginning with faceless void head. Put them in the right folder. Like create the same folder structure as here, like the models, heroes, faceless void, models, heroes, faceless void, and then hit the, oh, sorry about that. Yeah, you should actually close the Dota2 client before doing it, but it says success, so we're just going to run it again. Right, so now it has replaced the default head model with my custom model. So if I now start Dota, I can actually preview the facial animations by just going into a bot practice game and previewing the changes that I've actually made. And after I've showed that, I'm pretty much done with the tutorial. I'll just show you that there's another way to actually import the facial animations using the SMD and VTA files instead of the DMX files, because the problem with DMX files, as far as I know, is that you can't easily include particles or other cloth effects in the QC script if you use DMX files, because I think they should usually be inside the DMX, but I'm not sure about that. I can't make any guarantees. So you just have to work it out yourselves. I just wanted to make sure that there's another way beside the default DMX model format, because the DMX files are the newer formats which include a lot of the features which used to be encoded in the SMD files. Alright,
pick.
Right, let me unequip my head cosmetic, and there you see there's this weird little stub that I created. If you actually go inside the game, yeah, there, in the portrait, you can see him slightly move his mouth. It's not perfect because I didn't
Prepare for
implement
battle.
all the follies and different face movements, mainly mouth movements. But you can see that it's basically trying its best with the things it has.
Yes.
So, okay, we've seen it works basically. All right.
My path unspoons.
So now that we have that done, this is basically all you actually need normally to do this. But you can actually make your custom QC scripts and export it as a SMD VTA combo, like seen here. You just have to make sure that the actual order of the shape keys is the same as in the original if you do this. So make sure these are in the same order as in the source file. I mean in the original not SMT, and the original DMX file that we opened for examination, FBX file, sorry about that. So after you've done that, you can export this one with the VTA and SMD, but make sure you have the up axis set to Z for some reason. I don't actually know what that is all about, but it doesn't seem to work if I select Y. So anyway, just use Z if you export as SMD. Right, then if you have the SMD and VTA files, you actually need a QC file to bind them together. And we can use as a starting point the one that we created when we decompiled the model. So if we go back to the folder which we created in the source file, source filmmaker, game Dota2 words heroes faceless void, and then our decompiled extracted version. There we have a QC file which we can open to basically build our skeleton. So this is what we need mainly. You just of course need to change the references here, mainly the model, which you have to of course adjust the target if you don't want to just replace the default one. You have to reference the SMD file which you just extracted, and if you have an LOD1 version, of course you have to reference that in the LOD1. Then you have the hitboxes, which can largely remain the same as we don't really touch that, and there's the key values portion which you can put additional particle info and others. But now how do we actually include the flex animation details? If you actually go into the Valve developer wiki, we have some examples of how these are set up, and I've actually gone through the work of setting that up. So you have to reference the VTA file as a flex file, you have to list all the different blend shapes and the names, and then you have to list the different controllers. So these are the ones that you saw in the Half-Life model viewer, and these are the blend shapes which you set up in Blender or you watched otherwise. And these are then where you put the formulas which you extracted earlier. So then you have to add that to this file. And I've set up a basic QC file as an example, which you can use in the as a reference if you try to do the same thing with a different model. So let me just open that real quick. There it is. So here you open your SMD file, you open your VTA file, and then you define in the right order all the different shape keys, like in the same order that you have them in your Blender file. So this starts with the inner bar razor, and you can see that I start with the inner bar razor and just give them a name. In this case, just prefix them with an F to distinguish them from the flex controllers. All right, so then there's a definition of all the flex controllers. And well, these aren't actually meant to be there anymore. Ignore those. And then you define the relationships between the flex controllers and the blend shapes as extracted from the expressions. I believe this is actually the wrong one. Sorry about that. Another QC file. But the layout is the same, basically. That wasn't the wrong thing about this. It's just missing some of the additional information, like the bounding boxes. Sorry about that. A little bit confused here. Model source. Here is faceless void. There's the QC files. Yeah, so let me just copy it over from another folder which I know I have them stored in. Alright. There it is. It was the 10 kilobyte one. I should have just opened that. Right. As I said, it's the one that was 10 kilobytes big, and here is faceless void. Not very good at my organization right here, as you can see. Yeah, that's the 10 kilobyte one. Alright. Here you can see, like, I've made some added some basic comments to which lines you would usually change. I also forgot some, like the VTA file, which of course you have to adjust to yours. Alright, here see it's also missing those weird 3 lines. Alright, so of course the LOD1 reference, the hitbox bounding boxes, and yeah, that's basically all you need. Then you can use this QC file to compile this into an MDL file, which will also work. So let me just do that real quick as a demonstration. So let me get back to the source filmmaker. Okay, Dota2 source, model source, heroes faceless void. It's a 10 kilobyte file. I'll just compile that. It'll also, because the model name here is the default model, this will also replace the file which we just compiled the last time, which I'll just show you if this is done compiling. You'll see that these files, as it's sorted by date, you can right now see that it's actually modifying, or in this case overwriting the MDL files which are created previously. So if they're done, I can show you the modified files with the model viewer. I mean, there's a slight difference in the output, of course, but it's basically the same. And I can't really tell which one is more, which is the preferred one, which Valve would like to receive, because there's not been much feedback from Valve over this, and there will probably be an easier way to do this by the time you see this video, official version by Valve, to do this a lot easier, or they'll remove the portions, these portions of the models which require flex animations. We'll see how it all pans out in the end. Okay, so it's done actually compiling those, and as we can see here, the modified date is the current time, so you'll see that it recreated those. It's not the same ones that I had last time that I opened this. And faceless white head. Not to find it again. There it is. And as you can see, this time it actually alright, it's a slight different version that I exported the SMD file with, but it's the same one that you saw earlier, just has the outer ring of vertices scaled out to make it more visible in the game, but it's otherwise the same file. And as you can see, The flex controllers are also the same. We have just one additional one here, which I can't really find right now. It seems like we've forgotten one in the MX file, but never mind. You can see that it's all still intact. The draw open animations and the others all work as I did before. And I can also load it up in Dota2 real quick, just to show that it also works, and this also works with this method of the SMD and QC VTA file format, which, as I said, may be important to some people who are used to doing it this way. Let me just find the folder I was looking for, the Dota2 installation folder. And copy the files over. Replace them. And now we can start Dota and see the change models. Alright, so sorry about this taking all quite a long time and me being rather long-minded about this, but like I said, this is just in addition to the written guide. So if you want to look up some details but don't quite know how to do it. Also, all the different guides, how to set up all the programs and which programs are used, can be found in the description. So I've said like 3 times now, but you'll never know. Alright, this is the part where I wish I had an actual SSD to make the loading a little bit quicker. But anyways. Alright, let's big face this boy.
All pick.
As we can see, the model is the one that's changed slightly from the last one, but it's the one that we just saw in the model viewer.
I have seen how this
the
war
animations
ends.
still work.
Dark portents ahead.
The same
Prepare
as the
for
other one.
battle.
Path foreseen.
So this should basically conclude everything I have to tell you about these about Dota2 flex animations. So if you have some more questions or some feedback about the whole written guides, especially not the video mainly, because like I said, it's just an addition, a reference for people if they're really curious, just leave me a comment on the Dota2 guide linked in the description, or leave a comment under this video as you like. I hope this was informative for you in some way or another.